The Eagles got their revenge on the New York Giants, winning 38-20. Don't want to brag, but I predicted 38-13 on Birds of the Round Table this week, and the Eagles backups messed it up. But how nice it is, Eric, to sit here and talk about the backups playing at the end of a game, because the Eagles finally won a game decisively. Welcome into Postgame Live. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can give me a follow on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. Also joined by Eric. Give him a follow on Twitter at Eagles X's and O's. Eric, how are you doing? More importantly, how are you feeling about this Giants game?
Yeah, I think the Eagles did probably what they should have done in the first game at MetLife. Coming into this, the Giants were the 32nd ranked rush defense in the NFL, and this was the first time that the Eagles seemed to be able to exploit an obvious weakness in an opposing defense, which was great to see. And it's going to be one of these things where until we really see the film, I'm not going to be able to say, oh, is it definitely the Eagles asserting themselves and playing better versus the Giants were just miserable. I can't say that for sure yet. Probably a little bit of both. But I am happy that they were able to come out and do what they should have done on paper.
Yeah, you knew it was going to be a good day for the Eagles when they come out and on their second play of the game, they hand it off to Saquon Barkley, and he rips off a 65-yard touchdown run, which that singular run already made it his second highest rushing total of the year. And the run game performs well, the pass game performs well, and yes, it was against a bad Giants team, but this is the same bad Giants team that embarrassed the Eagles 2 weeks ago, and so I kind of thought they would bounce back. It's nice to get a win. It's nice to get a dominant win in this fashion headed into a bye week. Hopefully you're able to get some guys healthy. A.J. Brown, Cam Jurgens, Saquon Barkley now comes up, in the fourth quarter, Gimpy there. And so hopefully you can get all of these guys healthy and make that push down the back half of the season. But let's dive into it. And as you mentioned, Eric, we obviously don't have the film and we don't get a lot of quality replays on the broadcast. So we'll talk through what we think we saw and we'll come back and correct that in the midweek. But let's start with the passing attack. Jalen Hurts goes 15 of 20 for 179 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did take 4 sacks. What did you see from the Eagles' passing attack in this one?
Well, it looked like they had a better marriage of run and pass this game. You could see some of their under center run concepts, which it always helps when they're successful, and then lead into I remember the first play they had that under center play action. They hit Devontae over the middle, but then I was called back for a penalty, unfortunately. And they had a couple of those, had a couple of under center play action plays that were successful. Later, they had some successful shotgun runs, specifically same-side shotgun runs, which was a topic I had brought up a lot on social media this week. I was thrilled to see they went to that heavily. And then they had a couple pass plays off of that, an RPO to Goddard, another play they had down the field. So, once again, we always have this caveat that I can't say definitively that was the case, but it appeared that there was a little bit more of a cohesive scheme. Did you get that sense?
Yeah, I thought so. And, I think you could see right away the Eagles did a little more jumbo personnel again. Fred Johnson played 13 snaps. I'm assuming that 3 of those were the end of the game there, but that means he was in 10 snaps. Outside of that, where they went jumbo personnel, which is something they did some last week, and we thought last week it might have just been a response to not having a tight end 2. Well, they had a tight end 2 this week, and he played a decent amount of snaps. Grant Calcaterra played 35 snaps in this game, Dallas Goedert 37, and yet you still had an extra offensive lineman on 10 snaps. And so I like seeing them play a little more jumbo, and we'll get into the run game, but with the pass game, seeing Hurts target guys over the middle of the field, and yes, they are massive voids, but that's what the Eagles' run game should be able to create for this offense. It's not been a place that Hurts has traditionally thrown often, and if he continues to do that and they continue to utilize under center play action teams are not going to open up to it that much, but that just means it's going to open your run game up. And so I'm not going to knock them for taking those throws because it's what they need to have been doing all season. And so, like to see that. And then on the run game side of things, I mean, it feels dumb that it's week 8 and we finally just got back to doing the things that worked last year, like running gap scheme, adding in some of the same side shotgun things you talked about that have been some of their best runs of the year. They use Brett Toth as a puller. Like, that's something I remember Johnny and I talked about on our film show is maybe they're just not doing this because they don't trust him to pull. They pulled Brett Toth a decent amount of times in this game, and it seemed to go pretty well. And so this is what the Eagles' rushing attack should be. And again, the Giants don't have a great run defense, but they do have a really talented defensive front. And so I thought Saquon looked really good. Tank Bigsby, I think, is going to be the big storyline coming out of this game. He gets 9 carries for 104 yards, including the 2nd and 31 draw play, which is going to Kevin Patullo in the year 2035 is going to still be talking about that run as why we run on 2nd and longs. But what were your thoughts overall on the run game?
So 7 of 9 Tank Bigsby runs were positive EPA plays, 78% success rate. Over half of them went for first downs, and he accounted for the most expected points of any player on the Eagles offense outside of Hurts. So, and, when they got him, I was excited about his ability to add in the run. I thought, the bonus is the kick return, and he only had 6 in his career coming into it, so it was more like you're speculating that he could do it. And he probably could if he could catch, which you can't. So now that's out the window. They actually are using him as a running back, and he looks just like he did in Jacksonville. He has a lot of juice. He runs really hard. He has fumbling concerns, and that's probably that learning the playbook and the fumbling concerns probably combined to explain why he hadn't seen the field until this point. But I mean, what a great change of pace he is from Barkley. I think, what teams will realize over time if he starts to get more snaps is he's not a receiving threat at all. So it might be a little bit of a tell when he comes in. So Eagles will have to manage that. But I was thrilled how he ran. And then, a lot of Saquon, what he did was created on that long touchdown run, but that's what he did last year as well. But yeah, I think whether it's you or Johnny, we'll get some great film review on why did the run game work this week. And I think, one big part of it is that they did those things you talked about, the more gap scheme. You could see it clear as day, and then some more same side shotgun runs. And I'll be curious to see, they're coming out of the bye, they're going to face some better run defenses, and if they continue to use that, how does it hold up?
Yeah, and I mean, you look at, I don't remember when exactly they traded for Bigsby now, but he only had 4 offensive snaps going into this game, and so he got 16 in this game. Be interested to see. I mean, you're obviously not going to take Saquon Barkley off the field a lot regardless, but it's nice to have a second punch that isn't Will Shipley. And A.J. Dillon's been decent this year as well, but it's just nice to have guys that you can sort of salt games away with, and that in a game like this, which hopefully the Eagles are in some more games like this, that you can just put this guy out here and give him 8 carries in the fourth quarter and save those touches for Saquon. So really liked what I saw out of the run game. And we're still not seeing, really the QB run game either. The QB run game's still not really a factor. Jalen Hurts scrambles a little bit. They called, I think, 2 of the little slide RPOs that both ended up being passes, but we're not really seeing Hurts as a threat to run yet. And so I do think that's something else that you can stack on top of that in the run game to sort of help out down the road. And so there's positive building blocks. And of course, there's all the caveats about the team that they just played, not being a particularly good football team, but I like seeing some of those building blocks. It feels like there's a more cohesive plan, and it's a lot more under center than I expected it to be. But I'm fine with that as long as it's still working. So, what about the receivers? What are your thoughts on obviously AJ Brown out this game? Devontae Smith goes 6 for 84. Jahan Dotson has the mosses the practice squatter for a 40-yard touchdown, and then Dallas Goedert making the most of his limited targets, 3 targets, two touchdown catches. Thoughts on the receivers?
Yeah, I mean, so outside of that jet sweep, which counts as a completion to Gibson, which by the way, that should have went for more yards. I think he completely misread where he should have ran there. But only 2 catches, one against Corey Black, I think it was. So I mean, that's akin to like it wasn't even like the play wasn't really there. He just went up and mossed the guy. So, 2 catches total to any receiver outside of Devontae Smith. It was bizarre that the Giants weren't like recruiting more resources to try to take away Smith. And it's one of those things where I have no idea why he was able to get so open until I watch the all 22 and can see exactly the coverages they're using and the route combinations. But there was a few that they brought up and showed replays of, and concepts I liked. They ran, they got him going on that dig. They got a double post, which was unsuccessful, but it's one of my favorite concepts. So, overall, you got to be happy because the receivers pretty much caught everything that they should have. Seemed like the effort level was high, and what I wonder about is there going to start powering this narrative of Eagles scored 38 without AJ, now they don't need him, we're good to go.
Yeah, I'm sure Twitter will be perfectly sane about everything this week, and it'll be totally fine. Of course, you get the weird story breaking this morning about him deleting tweets that were speaking positively of Jalen Hurts, and that's a whole conversation we could have. I don't particularly want to unless you do. I hate talking about that kind of stuff. I'm not interested. I just want to talk about what happens on the field. But I will mention Darius Cooper. I don't think he never got a target in this game, did he? I don't think he did. 0 targets, but I did notice him a couple times positively as a run blocker, which is kind of nice. You don't generally see a lot of positives from the Eagles receivers as run blockers, with the exception of Johnny Wilson, who's been out this year. So I liked seeing that a couple of different times.
So wait, I think wasn't there like a pass interference where he was targeted? But obviously the play doesn't count.
There might have been. Yeah. He was. That was right. It was the 3rd and 11, I think, and he was. It's why it's not showing up in the score sheet. But he was targeted and drew the DPI. So
yeah. What I don't want to harp on this, but just one sentence on overall officiating. Like personally, I thought it was terrible. Not Giants fans and the national media at large will say it was skewed because of that one viral play with the tush push, which was probably a bad call. But I thought it was
definitely a fumble.
I thought it was more incompetence than it was like biased officiating, but it was definitely bad.
I liked the whole Brian Dable wants to challenge it, and they explain to him that he can't challenge it, and then he challenges it anyways, and they're like, okay, well, the call on the field stands. Brian Dable just I just don't care for Brian Dable. Like, I feel like he just emotionally coaches in ways that are bad for his team. You get that. You get the thing a couple weeks ago with him going into the tent yelling at the medical staff. You get him calling back-to-back design QB runs to make it a 3-score game with 2.5 minutes left. In the same game, he lost his other promising rookie running back, which wasn't his fault, but still, like, let's coach a little bit smarter than that. And so, I mean, I'm glad he's in New York. Hopefully he stays for a long time. But yeah, the officiating was bad. And there's some of them that I just feel like watching them, I don't even understand what the booth's talking about. Like the overturned fumble strip sack. Like, I thought his hand was clearly moving forward, and the booth was like, maybe it's moving millimeters. It's like, I don't know. I felt like it was moving forward. And then you get the touchdown that's called back like 2 plays later for OPI, and they're like, yeah, that's just a little bit of hand fighting. I was like, to me, that was clearly a push off. So sometimes I don't even know what the booth is talking about. And if the rules experts don't even know what they're talking about, how are the officials supposed to? So I don't necessarily want to do a whole official conversation, but yeah, I thought they were bad. And also I feel like I just don't even know half the rules anymore because they're interpreted differently by every crew every week.
And the thing is, on that OPI, they cut to this end zone cam where you're looking at it like this and you have no depth perception and it's in super slow mo and you can't really see anything. But if you just watch that in real time from the horizontal view, it's like clear as day. Boom, extended arm, Klingon goes flying. Like you can make anything look any which way with camera tricks. I thought the presentation was pretty bad overall. But yeah, I don't have anything more to say on the officiating.
It's a great comment from Brett Eclipse. Says Brian Dable looks like the black explosive Angry Bird on the sidelines. That's hilarious. Makes me want to go see if I can download Angry Birds and play it again. But anyways, anything you want to call out on the offensive line? I don't know that I had many takeaways offensive line wise. I kind of got lost in the game at times. But anything O-line or anything else on the offense that you want to talk about before we move on to the defense?
I think Toth is better at center than he is at left guard. Um, one thing to note there is in pass protection, often the center is helping. It's not often that they have a guy where they're one-on-one responsible for. And that one time they learned, it was like third and medium, and they lined up Dexter Lawrence over him. I'm like, oh, here we go. And he got thrown straight back into the backfield. But I like that they're able to get him on the move in some run concepts. And I think Dickerson, just from a few plays that I saw, he looked better. So it's great to see. And it's easy to say, okay, Giants are the 32nd ranked run defense. Everyone's going to look better. But they still have a good line. So if you're winning at the point of attack, to me, that's something that can extrapolate forward. If it's like, oh, your running backs are just dicing the second level guys, that's probably less so. From what I saw initially, it looked pretty good up front.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, this is still the same team you ran for 73 yards against 2 weeks ago. And so, regardless of how good they are, it's a market improvement from 2 weeks ago. I will just mention, I've watched too much Eagles football in my life because when they lined up to go for it on that first 4th and 3 and then false started and it went to a 4th and 8, I turned to my son and said, great, now we get to push it back 5 yards to try a field goal that we will miss. And then Jake Elliott doinked it off the upright. And I was like, I've seen too much Eagles football in my lifetime. I know how this works. But let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball then. Overall, they do a really good job against the Giants' run game. And, of course, Cam Scattaboo only ends up with 3 carries on the day. So it's hard to judge maybe the run defense fully because they lose the guy that terrorized the Eagles last time. But you look at Jackson Dart, he only rushes for 17 yards. One of those was a touchdown. But they did a better job of not letting him scramble than they did the first time around. However, I thought they still allowed Dart to escape the pocket far too many times. And if you go, watching the game, it felt like the only way the Giants offense worked was if Jackson Dart can extend for 5 seconds and improvise. And, they don't have very many weapons right now, especially when Scattaboo leaves. You don't have pass catchers, and the Eagles' defense is operating at pretty much full strength. It was frustrating to watch him escape the pocket so many times when it truly just felt like if you just mush rush, just push the pocket and make him beat you from the pocket, he can't do it, not with the weapons they have. And so there's still some things to clean up there for the Eagles. There were some reps early in the game, especially. I thought Jalix Hunt had a really good rep where he started to rush upfield and then he spun back to the inside and sacks Jackson Dart. That was really good early, and I saw that a few times, but there was a lot of other times where it was just too easy for him to get out of the pocket. So that was my primary thing I noticed with the defense. So what did you think about that, and where else do you want to talk about the defense?
Yeah, and if you remember in the Super Bowl, that's exactly how they stopped Mahomes from scrambling. Is yeah, they would get that initial rush upfield, but they'd immediately peel back and they take away the escape lanes. That's effective. But then there was too many times that you saw in the game, like you mentioned, where the edges they rush way upfield, and then you have like the defensive tackle winning to the opposite direction, and so there's a giant escape lane. To me, that you just need to have like a better coordinated rush, like you said, must rush, especially from a guy who coming into the game. I think I read the stat: 48% of his third down conversions were on the ground, running the ball. So yeah, that was a disappointing. It's been a repeated theme that the Eagles have a quarterback in their grasp and just miss them. Like
Yeah.
they just are not able to wrap the guy up. I don't know. I don't think there's like, oh, if you just do this, you'd fix that problem. To me, it's just like probably going for the sack too much. Whereas if you kind of just take away the space, they sometimes quarterbacks just self sack. So yeah, I there's a tiny bit of that like 2023 stuff where it's like guys are just trying to win at any cost and then like leaving space. So it's I think once if Smith and BG are in coming after the bye, we'll reassess what that looks like.
Yeah, the Eagles on the day had 9 missed tackles, and 4 of those came from defensive linemen. Jalen Hunt with 3 missed tackles, Jalen Carter with one. Um, yeah, there's a lot of times they're close but no cigar with these quarterbacks. And you mentioned BG coming back is going to be nice. Bringing back Nolan Smith, which do we is he expected to be back the first week after the bye? Have we heard anything on that? Do you know?
I don't know, but
Uh,
he's like I think in terms of IR, he's can come back.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure where he's at, but getting those guys back will be really nice because you need to get Patrick Johnson off the football field. And I still stand by the fact that the Eagles need to go flip a day 3 pick for a defensive tackle and get Byron Young off the field as well. Byron Young and Patrick Johnson combined for 36 snaps in this game, and frankly, that's 36 too many. Those guys are just not playable players in regular season football games. And I thought Patrick Johnson looked pretty bad in this one. I also thought it was interesting, and I talked about this on our player spotlight video in the Patreon for Nakobe Dean, that I don't know how the Eagles are going to handle this whole situation. With Dean coming back, he looked really good last week. By the end of the game, they were giving him some snaps in nickel and taking Campbell off the field. And in this game, he outsnaps Jihad Campbell. Campbell had 21 snaps, and where did he go? Nakobe Dean had 33, so he has 12 more snaps than Jihad Campbell, and he came back down to earth a little bit. He had a couple big missed tackles. He gives up that completion down the field, which it was good coverage. It's not good technique. He didn't get his head around it all, and the ball just like goes right under his elbow. I don't think Jihad Campbell probably gives that up. He's a better coverage player. He's not as good as a run defender, but today you didn't get the run defense plays from Dean. And it's a good problem to have in that you have 3 solid linebackers that you can play. I just personally fear that by taking Jihad Campbell, who's been really good, I mean, he was the odds on favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year going into this week. You're taking this guy off the field, and it's going to set back some of that development because we had seen strides in him as a run defender. And so I don't know what the solution is there, but and then half of the snaps he was on the field, he lined up as an edge, which is not something I think he's well suited to do. So what are your thoughts on that whole playtime distribution? How would you approach that if you were the coaching staff?
Yeah, and I've been pretty consistent on this that on base snaps, so that's when you have 5 defensive linemen, you just put Dean on the field, take Campbell off completely. Now, one of the issues with that is that then you get like Byron Young on there, who's really bad. But that problem probably goes away when you get Brandon Graham back. And then, because he would be tremendous to play in base. And then, anytime you're in a pass down, take Dean off completely and put Campbell in. I wonder if we'll hear Campbell was banged up because he disappeared off the field for, it looked like, a couple drives there in the middle of the game. There was a 3rd and 7 when they gave up the Nakobe Dean wheel route where Jordan Davis was rushing and Nakobe Dean is covering a running back in space. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So I'm going to wait to hear if there's more information on that. And I think it's a good point by you, which is now Campbell is not getting a lot of off-ball linebacker looks in nickel, where that's where his future is. So are you potentially stunting his development? You know, big snaps in the playoffs where you potentially want him there. Is he getting all the reps that he could leading up to that? So it's a fine balance, right? You want to get Dean back into the fold, try to get him up to speed. You want to win football games, but you also want to develop your rookie. And I want them probably to lean a little bit more into the Campbell off-ball development and see if they could find another answer at edge. And maybe we see that after the bye week. So I'll just reserve judgment for the time being. But if they come out in week 10 and Nolan Smith and BG are out there and we see that, then I'll start to criticize.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like the Eagles blitzed a ton in this game, which is something they have been doing. And part of that could have just been the whole keep Dart in the pocket thing. But Zach Bond only had 1 pass rush rep. Cooper DeJean had 1. Nakobe Dean had 3. And so we did seem to see the Eagles pull off of blitzing a little bit. It probably doesn't help that when you dial up, I think it was the one Zach Bond blitz play turned into the Cam Scattaboo touchdown on the Giants' second drive where you end up with Patrick Johnson one-on-one with the running back and he just gets beat. And so maybe at that point Vic was like, you know what, we're just not going to blitz because I don't want Patrick Johnson running with a running back. But I'm curious to see how that plays out too, because we've seen Fangio be more blitz heavy than he's really been at any point in his career this season with the Eagles, and he pulled back off of that today. And it's not like BG was out there, that Nolan Smith was back, and so I assume this was just game plan specific for the Giants. But I am really curious to see what that's going to look like long term coming out of the bye and hopefully getting back to full strength. And maybe making a move, too. There may be a move on the horizon as well.
Yeah, and this game almost comes at the worst time because with the players the Giants had out there, you know, through the line share of this game, that's one of the worst rosters in the NFL easily. And so you should just win. And to what extent does that make the Eagles comfortable at positions we know that they're not good at? Edge, which there's reinforcements coming. Cornerback, which this is something I want to highlight. I hardly remember Keely Ringo getting thrown at the entire game, which was bizarre because they threw at him in a couple contested situations in MetLife and had success. Why did they not throw at him? It was kind of the same thing in the Bucks game where they didn't throw at him for some reason, and he had decent coverage in that game, but there was times they definitely could have beat him on outbreakers, inbreakers, and stop routes. They even showed at least 1 or 2 replays where they had him on it was like a 15-yard comeback and he got beat easily, but the read was to the other side. So I thought that was bizarre that they didn't try to attack him more. But I'm definitely going to be breaking that down on film and see what the deal is. Going forward, what are your feelings at cornerback 2? Are they going to try to get Bennett in when he's healthy? Are they pretty much not going to make a move at the deadline? What are your thoughts?
Man, I have no idea. It feels like these cornerbacks just take turns playing one good game where you're like, okay, just stay with that guy. And then he just melts down over the next 2 weeks. And I have no idea what they're going to do at corner. you would still like for it to be Ringo because Bennett's a guy that you feel like they could throw a flag justifiably on every single coverage rep, and he's a bad tackler. And then Adoree Jackson is just an older player that doesn't trust his speed. Like, you would like for it to be Ringo. I don't know. Like, maybe they should just play a different guy every game, and maybe you can just catch the good games for each one. Clearly that's not the actual solution, but I don't really know what you do there. You would like to see Ringo take it. I don't know if he's going to do that. I mean, I thought this game was good from what I could see. Per PFF, which is not worth a lot, but he was targeted 3 times and allowed 0 receptions. I don't know. I don't know what you do there. I know a lot of people would like to trade for a CB2. I just don't know that there's a CB2 out there that you can get at a reasonable cost that would be a big upgrade. Whereas I do think there's guys you could get on the defensive line more so. Everybody needs cornerbacks. There is an element of, I think, you can make it work with 2 really good corners and just a below average guy. But so far, the Eagles haven't really struck that balance until today. And again, it's the Giants, so who really knows?
And you would think that by this point in the season, one of those guys would start to like separate themselves. And I think you could make a credible argument for each and every guy. Like Adoree, he's not going to have coverage busts, and he doesn't generally get beat deep. And so that's valid, and you could justify him being out there. Ringo, he has the most upside. He's the most athletic. He can lay the boom at times. He's really good at block destruction in the screen game, and you can make the argument there. Jacorian Bennett, he might be the stickiest corner of the 3, but he's a walking flag. When he came in, didn't seem to know what to do at all, and a bad tackler. So that's just really tough because like no matter what, you're giving something up. And the ironic thing is, they all seem to have some of the same deficiencies, other than Ringo's lateral agility. That's kind of unique to him. But like I wouldn't necessarily call any of them poised. I'd almost like rather take any random corner of that talent level, and at least if they had poise, you could be like, all right, that's a distinguishing factor. And another thing you said is who's out there to get that's an obvious upgrade. The one guy I've talked about on social media a lot is Tariq Woolen, but he's gotten better every single game this week, or every single game this season. The Seahawks are a playoff contender. Why are they going to go ahead and trade like one of their top corners? I think, in the games he's played, he's led them in snaps. So it doesn't necessarily make sense that they would trade for him. You bring in Cam Taylor-Britt, you're going to have the exact same problems that you have with the corners they already have here. The one interesting thing, and it would be pretty big shakeup if the Eagles just bite the bullet, and I know you're not going to like this, but if they say, let's bring in Roger McCreary, we put him in the slot, and we kick DeJean outside, and we know he's a lot better inside, but this is still going to be our best combination. And I don't think that's far-fetched. It is unfortunate that you'd have to go to that. But, like, at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to help a guy on the inside than it is to help a guy on the outside. And that would be your justification for doing something like that. So, of those things I mentioned, is there anything that resonates at all?
Yeah, I'm open. I'm open to bumping DeJean outside and putting somebody else in the slot, because we've seen him do it in base and we've seen him do it well, and I don't feel like he's been as dominant in the run game out of the slot this year. I still really like him there, but if you had to do it, that'd be fine. I was laughing while you were talking here at Brett Eclipse's comment, said send Jacorian Bennett back to the Raiders for Thomas Booker in a hostage exchange. Yeah, I'd love to have that one back. But yeah, I don't know what they end up ultimately doing at CB2. I didn't notice, and this is a massive positive for me, I didn't notice Andrew Makuba today at all, which is a step in the right direction. He talked very candidly about the fact he was busting too many coverages earlier this week. And again, and I'm not going to keep giving the caveat, it's the Giants, okay? But I didn't notice him in a bad way this time. And I think he is a solid player that so far this season has made like 2 or 3 boneheaded plays a game and they've typically cost the Eagles. And so it was nice to not really notice him today. Did you notice anything from Makuba? Either direction, but I definitely didn't notice any coverage busts from him.
I seriously didn't even notice him on a single play the entire game. Like I didn't even
Perfect.
see him at all.
He played 45 snaps.
Yeah, it was it was weird. Like Blankenship showed up a lot on the
Yeah.
broadcast, good and bad. I actually think maybe this was one of his worst games. He's been like maligned, I think, by some pocket of the fan base, probably partly because like the Devontae Adams play in a low PFF grade. I'll be on the record. I think Blankenship's been solid and steady this year. That today looked a little bit off. But yeah, I agree with you. Makuba obviously wasn't noticeable. And this is a game where I'm definitely going to be interested to watch the secondary to figure out like why didn't they at least take some more shots downfield. A couple of the shots they did take, they had opportunities, connected on a few. So I thought that was actually a little bit strange, especially because the Eagles, I got to be honest, like I'm not in love with when they run these 5-man fronts with Campbell on the edge. I feel like
Yeah.
often they just are taking a guy out of coverage and exchanging it for a guy who's not good in run defense. Like you're losing in both facets just to give this presentation like, oh, look, we're heavy against the run, try to dissuade the run. And if I were a team, I'd say, oh, who cares? We're running outside zone to the right anyway. Um, so yeah, it's
Well,
yeah.
I
Go
would
ahead.
also just do what the Vikings started doing to the Eagles, which is get in 12 personnel and put both tight ends on one side and both receivers on the other, and you end up with Jahad Campbell or Patrick Johnson standing up over a slot receiver. Because that's what you when your response to 12 personnel is always base with a 5-man front, it becomes easy for teams to start to manipulate that. And I mean that was a thing pre Vic Fangio, when you had Sean Desai in, and that was the only way you could stop the run was to get into those penny fronts, and teams started to manipulate that. It hasn't been as bad this year, but it is something I would look for if the Eagles continue to go to that well.
Yeah, and there was a few plays I remember Hunt starting out wide, and then I think as the ball was snapped, he kind of came up and rushed, and they obviously got victimized on that one sim pressure. You know, it's one disappointing thing about the pressures this year is that the Chiefs game, it looked like every single time they blitzed, they got a clean guy in unblocked. Since that game, I can hardly remember a single blitz that came in completely unblocked. Um, it's if there's one like what I criticism of Fangio that I think you could substantiate with evidence is that his pressure packages are not that exotic, and I
And he
not
typically hasn't wanted to blitz, but he's started to have to do it more this year.
and if you're gonna blitz, and I'm all for it if you think that is what's appropriate, can you have some more varied looks? Like
Yeah.
the amount of teams that have success, you'll look at a pass rusher stats and you'll be like, oh my gosh, Nick Bonito or yeah, Nick Bonino. Sorry, who is the guy? Oh yeah, Byron Young of the Rams has 9 sacks coming in today. Brian Burns has like 10 sacks. You're like, these numbers are insane. The Eagles' top sack guy from the edge has what, 1.5 sacks? And one of the reasons, of course, those guys are more talented than anyone the Eagles have, but one of the reasons is they'll bring these looks where they'll have 6 and 7 guys on the line, and sometimes the edge will come in scot free, or they get easy one-on-ones and or can work in space and stuff like this. Whereas if you just looked at everyone's numbers in neutral situations with a straight up 4-man rush, they would come back down to earth. Well, the Eagles really don't do that. Um, so like you'll see the sim pressures, but rarely are they like stacking a bunch of guys on the line, if ever. So maybe I just think that they could be a little bit more exotic with the pressure packages. If I had to steelman an argument about why they're not doing that, is they have enough to figure out with their coverage where they're
Yeah.
like, okay, if we're gonna practice and put focus on stuff in the film room, it's gonna be on that rather than trying to come up with some exotic Rex Ryan blitzes.
Yeah, and Brett Eclipse saying that Fangio is going to do a study on Brian Flores. The thing about Brian Flores is coverage busts aren't infrequent in that. And a lot of times the pass rush does get home and cover that up. But that's like the anti Fangio. It's all about sound coverage on the back end. But yeah, you mentioned the Eagles' leading sack getters. Here's the Eagles' top sack getters right now. With 3 sacks, you have Moro Ojimo, a rotational defensive tackle. Then number 2 is Jordan Davis, a run stuffing nose tackle. And tied with him is Zach Bond, an off ball linebacker. And then just behind him in 4th is Zadarius Smith, who is retired again. So, yeah, if the Eagles could get a little more pressure there, that would certainly help. I do think it's funny. Leave it to Eric and I to turn like a post-game show of the biggest win of the season into troubleshooting what everything the Eagles should do post-bye. We're not even talking about the game anymore. But Eric and I don't get on the mic with each other often enough. So there's nothing else major that stuck out to me defensively in this game other than just like how good the Eagles were on early downs against the Giants. And then they really did struggle on later downs, but a lot of that just comes down to the Jackson Dart of it all and his ability to improvise in those long down and distance situations. Anything else you want to talk about defensively before we get into player of the games?
Yeah, so it looks like 5 out of their 12 third down passes, or I guess they had a fourth down as well. So 5 out of 11 were successful, as you mentioned, a lot of them on extending plays. Pass rush lane integrity, that's going to be a coaching point again. Like they got away with one. People remember when Dart chucked that one ball away. He had a blocker on Bond, and he was outside, and he could, like, to me, he would have ran for the first 9 out of 10 times, and for some reason he didn't. So I think we're starting to realize, like, when are you not facing a mobile quarterback? The
Yeah.
only one this year is Stafford, and that actually helped the Eagles because in the second half they completely clamped down on the Rams offense, and it helps when you don't have to worry about the quarterback scrambling. Um, so it's Packers. Who's the other team coming out of the bye?
Uh,
Lions, right?
First 3 out of the bye is Packers, Lions, Cowboys.
So there you go. 3 quarterbacks who are not much of scramblers, if at all. And that we'll see. Like that might be that combined with getting 1 or 2 of these edges back in, that might be a huge deal for the Eagles if they look better against these more statue-like quarterbacks. I do think that's given them issues. Although early in the season, they seemed to do a pretty good job. When they came in, like they did a good job against Mahomes, they did a good job against Bo Nix on the scrambling part, at least,
Yeah.
and Baker as well, except for that one like 70-yard touchdown. But that was actually a contain rush, so they actually did their job correctly, but they were too much into the cage rushing, and like you actually do have to collapse in on the quarterback. You can't just say we're going to stop you from scrambling and hold the guy forever. So yeah, people looking at the schedule are saying Goff, but that's about all that's left. So I don't know what they're suggesting, like the rest of the quarterbacks.
In terms of non-mobile guys.
Okay, but
I
Dak
mean, I
Dak
would
is not mobile, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say Dak is super mobile anymore. Love is, but he just like almost doesn't very often. And then you get down to at the end of the year, who knows who the Raiders are going to have at quarterback? But yeah. So let's get into our player of the games, Eric. I'll throw it over to you first. I give you first choice here. Who are you taking for player of the game in this one?
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I thought Bigsby was really good. So the thing is, a lot of his production came when they were already comfortably ahead. So that kind of knocks it down. So in terms of like sheer impact when the game was still in the balance, I'll go Devontae Smith.
All right. Then I will take Saquon Barkley. Starts the game off right with the 65-yard touchdown run. Ends up 14 carries for 150 yards and a touchdown. Hopefully, I think I saw somebody say it was a groin muscle, not a hamstring or a calf. So hopefully he can rest up over the next 2 weeks and just go on an absolute tear over the second half of the season. So Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, player of the games. I was very well prepared to go Tank Bigsby if you took Saquon. So I was going to go double running back. I would have been fine with that.
Saquon probably deserves it. I like. I was thinking about it, like how much of it was buoyed by that long touchdown, which a lot of that was him. So I'll give him credit for that. But yeah, he's definitely the player of the game.
Yeah, 13 for, let's see, he would have been 13 for 85 yards without that one run, which is still a good day in the office, especially for this season. Another
Patullo,
comment.
can we say something? Because I feel like we bully Patullo after every bad game. Should we say something good about him after this game?
Sure, you go ahead. I'm going to have to think longer.
So we saw what it seemed like was a lot more gap scheme. I'll give him
Yep.
credit for that. Same side shotgun runs, which, I've already talked about this on social media, but probably this is going to be something I start championing even more. Is that Mailata talked about better angles when you're running under center, less predictable about which direction you're going. Those things are all true, but that can also be true in shotgun. But teams tend to run 75 to 80% of their runs on the opposite side of the running back in shotgun. To me, there's no real justification for it. If anything, it should be close to a 50-50 split. They're extremely effective. Like, you get good angles in shotgun, same side toss. You get favorable leverage and numbers in shotgun, same side counter. Just run it. It's really good. I will give credit to Putullo for that. Looks like they ran, as you mentioned, a couple slide plays, that's some of our favorite concepts. The downfield stuff, I'm not quite sure. Like when they came out early in the game, I was a little bit skeptical because it looked like they're like running heavy personnel with condensed stuff and then like motioning from 3-by-1 to 2-by-2, and I go, oh, here we go again. But they were able to get Devontae open, so I'm holding out judgment until I watch the film. But overall, I was happy with what they did, and it looks like maybe they're actually committing to the under center. Do you have any thoughts, like how much of this was as a response to AJ being out, or are they really trying to find a new identity?
No, I mean, I think they went under center a lot last week when AJ was in and was healthy because I think he tweaked the hamstring again on that sluggo that won the game last week against the Vikings. And so I think we saw that last week. I think there was reporting that Jalen Hurts was pushing for more under center, and you saw him really commit to it this week. So I'm happy to see just something different. I don't think you have to get under center to run the football. It certainly doesn't hurt. It helps, but I don't think you have to do it. The Eagles were evidence of that last year, but what they were doing this year wasn't working. And I don't know why they've gone away from like shotgun gap scheme stuff, but if they feel the need to get under center to do it, I'm all here for it. And so it certainly seemed to work well this week. And so hopefully the offensive staff continues to flesh some of that out over the bye week, and we get more diverse passing things off of it because there's building blocks there. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of building blocks out of the last 2 weeks that still need to improve upon, but I feel better, obviously, than I did 2 weeks ago coming off of back-to-back losses.
There was only one thing that stuck out to me as horrible play calling. It was early on in the game, and they had gotten like a series of successful runs on like 1 or 2 consecutive drives. They get down, they're past midfield, it's 3rd and 3, and then they do a under center play action play. It's a complete dud, and then they go for it on 4th down. I'm like, why would you not just run it there if you're going to go for it on 4th and you've been highly successful? I thought that was bizarre. But overall, I was happy with it.
Yeah. So, well, there you have it, folks. Eagles' biggest win of the year. They win by 18, not by my exact score, thanks to a garbage time touchdown by the Giants against backups, but it is what it is. Eric, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts that you want to throw out about this one?
Yeah, I think what the Eagles are going to say, we just had a great game. We're finding our identity. We're going to get reinforcements after the bye. AJ, potentially Jurgens coming back, Graham, potentially Bennett, and Nolan Smith. And so I feel like they're not going to make a deadline move. And we'll see if that's the right thing. We'll see if first off we'll see if that's actually accurate and they do make a move. Maybe it's for like a backup tight end or something random like that, but I don't think there's necessarily going to be like a needle moving type trade. And coming out of the bye, if AJ does play, I hope we see this similar type of offense where they're marrying the run and the pass game. They're mixing up under center, using play action, targeting over the middle of the field, gap scheme, like all that stuff. That's what I hope to see continue.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Eagles dominate the Giants. Biggest win of the season. First 35-plus point game of the season for the offense. Have some requests for 3 words here in the comments. I kind of forgot about that. That's kind of slipped through the cracks the last few weeks. If you guys like the 3 words segment, let us know. We can bring that back after the bye. We'll get in the film room. We'll dig into the film and we'll figure out how to improve the post game shows. But in all seriousness, I was out of pocket for a couple weeks and that kind of slipped by the wayside. But we can certainly bring that segment back. But the Eagles roll here. They get revenge for the game 2 weeks ago. And they're going to ride a 6-2 record into their bye week. Hopefully get healthy, continue to build upon the things that we've talked about, and maybe we'll see some deadline moves as well. So that's going to do it for this one. We will catch you guys. It'll be 2 weeks for the next post-game show, but there'll be lots of content coming your way on the Eagles Pinpool Network during the bye week. There's going to be a lot of great stuff in our Patreon as well at patreon.com/Eagles Film Room. If you enjoy film type content, Eric and Johnny and I put out tons of content each week. I'm not sure what all the plans are for the bye week. I think Johnny is planning to do like an in-depth run game study over this season, which he's got a lot of things to work with here. I'll have a pass game review
real
out.
quick on that. And I don't want to promise anything. Potentially a huge guest appearance who's going to help Johnny break down the run game, which I highly recommend if you're not a part of the Patreon to sign up now so you can watch that.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll have a pass game review out hopefully tomorrow afternoon, if not Tuesday morning, so we can dive into a lot more of the passing stuff. And there were so few passes in this game, I might legitimately be able to do them all in the video. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for those of you that are here commenting, especially those of you, J-Rock, giving me a hard time in the chat all throughout the show. Always appreciate you guys. We will catch you guys next time. Go Birds.